Assalamualaikum everyone and welcome to our discussion video. Today we are diving into a fascinating concept in both literature and philosophy, naturalism. So in this video we will discuss about it. So my name is Muhammad Imran Hussain.
My name is Amir Hafiz bin Ahmad Raji.
My name is Abdul Rahman Akram.
My name is Muhammad Ali bin Shadib.
My name is Cik Muhammad Adel bin Ismail.
So in this video I will discuss what is naturalism. Naturalism is the philosophy that our morals and ethics is stem from nature and observed reality, not supernatural beliefs. It is just about nature. It's a powerful lens through which we understand human behavior, society, and even faith. Emerging in the late 19th century, especially in literature, naturalism builds on realism, but takes it a step further. It suggests that our lives are deeply shaped and sometimes trapped by heart-beating environment and the lens of nature, laws of nature. In other words, we don't always have as much as control as we think. But naturalism doesn't only live in books. We see it reflected in films, debates on free will, and how we interpret human behavior today. So in this video we will break down naturalism, its concept and historical development, characteristic and impact. Hopefully we will give you a fresh perspective.
My name is Amir Hafiz bin Ahmad Raji, and I will present about main concept of naturalism and historical development. So naturalism is about philosophy. Naturalism is a philosophical worldview that holds all phenomena can be explained by natural laws and forces. It also rejects supernatural or spiritual explanations, and it includes two core components, which is ontological naturalism and methodological naturalism. Ontological naturalism is about what exists, that they believe only natural things exist and everything is a part of the world is natural. It also rejects the existence of supernatural entities like gods, souls, or spirits. Then, methodological naturalism is about how we know the things, focus on the scientific method as the most reliable way to study about naturalism. It also rejects explanations that are based on the observation, testing, and the evidence. Then historical development of the naturalism ideologies. First, in the 17th century, the term naturalism was used uncomplimentary by Christian apologists to describe those who denied supernatural causes. Then, in the 18th century, science, especially Newtonian physics, coexist with belief is non-physical causes, but reflecting to a pluralist worldview. Then, in the 19th century, naturalism is growing stronger as idealism began to decline. Emergence influence like Darwin's theory of evolution and the scientific optimism like thinkers like Comte, Mill, Spencer, and Mach. German materialists and early naturalists promote the physical explanations, especially about the principle of energy conservation allowed. In the early to mid 20th century, the idea of causal closure emerged. All physical effects must have physical causes, and the thinkers like Fiedel, Oppenheim, and Putnam had argued for a strict naturalist worldview. And in the mid-20th century, naturalism was redefined in American philosophy with its ontological and methodological dimensions. It becomes central to analytic philosophy, emphasizing scientific reasoning. And in the late 20th to 21st century, scientific naturalism dominated but faced criticism for being overly reductionist. Many alternative forms emerged, like the liberal of relaxed naturalism, which aim to include aspects of human experience such as consciousness and morality. The debate between strict and expanded versions of naturalism continues until today. Thank you.
Characteristics of naturalists. Naturalists are people who believe nature controls most things in life, and they enjoy being outdoors and feel connected to natural places like forests, rivers, and the ocean. They explain how things happen by looking at nature, not by emotions or society. So for example, they would say children will act out because they relate them to animals, which ignores other reasons like family or mental health. They believe that learning is important, but at the same time they reject schools and institutions because they think they take them away from nature. Naturalists prefer using facts and observations instead of guessing or believing in things that they cannot see, which is why they would reject miracles or anything supernatural. They also believe that everything in life is already set by nature and will not be changed, which would lead to a negative view of life. And they believe that only the strong survive, and that people often make the world worse with their actions. Naturalists try to stay realistic, but they also believe their lives are already shaped by nature, so they often talk about how tough and unfair life is. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So my name is Cik Muhammad Adam bin Cik Ismail. So today our group will be talking about naturalism ideologies. So the naturalism is the idea that everything in the world can be explained by nature, science and logic, rather than supernatural force or religious belief. It encourages people to rely on facts and evidence to understand the world around them. So the first one is the impact on the science and thinking. So one of the major impacts of naturalism is how it changed the way people think by emphasizing science and logical reasoning. Naturalism helped the growth of modern science. People began to focus on understanding the world based on evidence rather than they are relying on the supernatural evidence. The second one is the impact on the moral thinking. Naturalism also influenced how we think about the ethics and morality. Instead of basing morals on religious teaching, it encouraged a human-centered approach. This means the ethics become more focused on what's good for people and society rather than on the divine commands. The last one is the impact in the literature. So in literature, naturalism had a very big influence. The famous writers like Emile Zola and Stephen Crane used this approach to write stories about the struggle of everyday people thinking about the life. They show how people live are shaped by things like the environment and their upbringing, and also the social condition.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Ali bin Masadi. I will be talking about naturalism strength. Naturalism strength lies in its focus on observation and logic, which align with Islam's emphasis on seeking knowledge, and the Quran encourages observation of nature as signs of God's wisdom. And there are also hadith emphasize the duty of seeking knowledge for every Muslim. Furthermore, naturalism recognition of natural laws resonates with the Islamic concept of Sunnatullah, which is the established order of the universe. As illustrated in verse in the Quran, it describes the precise order of the cosmos. However, naturalism faces criticism from an Islamic perspective due to its denial of the divine and supernatural. This directly contradicts core Islamic belief in God, angels, jinn, and the soul. Additionally, naturalism struggles to explain the origin and purpose of the universe and life, while Islam clearly states that the purpose of creation as the worship of God. Finally, naturalism limitation restrict the understanding of realities affirmed in Islam, such as miracle and divine intervention, exemplified by the miracles attributed to the Prophet Isa in the Quran.
So today, I will explain to you about Stoicism practices. What is Stoicism? Is Stoicism and Naturalism are the same? The answer is no, but it's closely related. Stoicism is a fatalistic and naturalistic pantheism, and they also value reason and observation. Is Stoicism still relevant today? Why? If the answer is yes, why? First, Stoicism shows mental resilience in the noisy world, which means it teaches us to recognize what's within and outside of your control. And Stoicism is a framework for emotional intelligence which promotes rational thinking over reactive emotion in modern therapy, which helps leaders and professionals to always be better and be calm under pressure, make a better decision based on their reason. So, Stoicism can be practiced too by Muslims to train their self-discipline, patience and gratitude in life, but a Muslim also cannot be too obsessed with this practice. Thank you.
Sometimes people say what's right or wrong depends on society. It works just like humans do. That is moral naturalism, the idea that ethics are only shaped by human needs and survival with no divine source. But this actually clashes with Islam, which says that morality comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's halal and haram does not depend on people's opinion or cultural trends. Without divine guidance, moral standards become unstable. What's good today could become bad tomorrow, and what's bad today could be good tomorrow. For example, interest or riba is legal in many places, but Islam clearly forbids it. Naturalism ignores this fixed guidance. So as Muslims, we believe in objective morality rooted in revelation, not in changing human desires. Thank you.
I was reading about naturalism. It says observing of nature and using logic is a big part of understanding things. That reminds me of how Islam encourages us to learn about the world around us, right?
Exactly. And the idea of natural laws makes sense with our belief in Sunatullah, the way Allah has set up the universe. Everything follows the precise order.
But then it also says naturalism does not believe in God or anything supernatural. There's a huge difference with Islam, which clearly states that Allah is the creator.
Absolutely. And naturalism doesn't really explain why we are here. In Islam, Allah tells us He created us to worship Him. That gives us our life so meaningful.
Every time we choose to take the bus, bike or walk instead of driving alone, you are practicing a naturalistic ethic, whether you realize it or not. Naturalism says our morals should be based on real world facts, and the fact is cars are one of the biggest sources of air pollution and carbon emissions. It's not about belief, it's about what we know through science and nature. That's naturalism in daily life, making choices.
Behavioral therapy (CBT) is a physiological treatment that helps people manage problems by changing the way they think and behave. It's based on the idea that our thought, feeling, and action are all connected together. If we can change the negative thinking, we also can improve how we feel and act. This CBT is not based on spiritual or supernatural ideas. It is based on the science, observation, and also the logic. So, how the technique to do the therapy? The first one is about the thought record. We write the negative thought and find the patterns. The second one is the cognitive restructuring, the challenging and changing harmful belief. And the last one is the exposure therapy. It's facing first in a safe step by step in our life. So CBT is used around the world, but it's commonly found in the United States, in the Kingdom, Canada, and part of the Europe.
What is naturalism? Naturalism is a philosophical doctrine which holds the belief that matter is the ultimate reality. Thus, naturalism believes that the material world is the only real world, and that it is governed by natural laws. As we can see, naturalism is directly opposed to idealism in its interpretation of reality, in the sense that idealism holds the belief that the material world is not real. For the idealists, the material world is just a copy of the real, which is beyond this world. For example, for Plato, who was considered to be the leading proponent of idealism, the true reality cannot be experienced through the senses. The true reality for Plato is the universal and eternal form that exists beyond the material world. Naturalism and realism are of kindred spirit, as both regard matter as the ultimate reality. However, they differ significantly in its interpretation of nature. In realism, there is the emphasis on a faithful representation of nature, while in naturalism, nature is viewed as a force, that is, a powerful and indifferent mechanism. Given that nature is a force, a powerful and independent mechanism, the material world for the naturalist, therefore, is being governed by a system of natural laws. Hence, for the naturalist, nature is everything. It is the whole and ultimate reality. For this reason, when the naturalist interprets the material world, he or she focuses on explanations that come from the laws of nature, rather than employing supernatural or spiritual explanations. This explains why the naturalists have high regard for actual or natural facts, situations, and realities. For this reason, the naturalists presume that, in principle, nature is completely knowable. This is because there is in nature a regularity, unity, and wholeness, which can be accessed by the human mind. According to the naturalists, without these regularity, unity, and wholeness, objective and scientific knowledge would not be possible. In philosophy, the leading proponents of naturalism are F. J. E. Woodridge, Morris R. Cohen, Ernest Nagel, Sidney Hook, and the famous John Dewey. However, the best-known proponent of naturalism was the novelist and French art critic Émile Zola. In fact, Zola was considered by many scholars as the father of naturalism.